Hi, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming. The title of our session is Faculty Member ISO, Interdisciplinary Collaborators. And I'm Meg Brooker, and I'm from the Department of Theater and Dance.
And I'm Kate Pantelides from the Department of English.
And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done together. We've worked in a range of different contexts, including both teaching and research. But we also just wanted to hear names and departments from you all before we get started. So.
Julie Myatt from the Department of English.
Dean Curtis, Communication Studies.
Ryan Korstange, University Studies.
I am Rohit Singh, Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies.
Mary Huffschwilly, History and MT Engage.
Andrew Fialka, History.
Shaman Randall, Media Arts.
Hello, I'm Chaney Mosley. I'm with the School of Agriculture. I've got a bit of a head cold. I apologize.
Jason Martin. I'm in the library.
Fantastic.
So thank you for joining us. The setup of our plan today for our workshop is to talk a little bit about our own story of collaboration, going with this sort of theme, cheesy though it may be, of that difficult search for the right partners for research and teaching interdisciplinary collaboration. Then we're going to talk about some reasons to collaborate. We imagine you're probably sold on that already since you're here, but hopefully we'll offer some other suggestions and reasons why you might do that. Then some challenges for interdisciplinary collaboration, because of course there's a reason that not everybody does it all the time. It is not so easy, so we want to address some of that. And then some starting places for collaboration. And then we're going to have a speed dating style opportunity to really kind of talk to everybody here about what it is that you want to do with your research and teaching, and what kind of potential collaborations you see for your work. Because that's something that we have found in our work together, that often we kind of come across really interesting people in our days and often in our LT and ITC workshops and meetings that we come to. But it can be really difficult to find those folks. And when you do, you can have really, really useful generative partnerships. So first, our story.
Yeah, so we wanted to start by sharing our story. And Kate and I actually first met at a Women and Gender Studies program potluck. And then we both applied to be faculty fellows for the College of Liberal Arts for the spring of 2016. And we worked together on a committee researching enrollment and decline in the liberal arts. And out of that work together, we identified interdisciplinarity as a space where we might be able to bring the liberal arts and bring the humanities into conversation with other disciplines across our campus.
And one of the most interesting things about that particular collaboration is we got the chance to talk to students. Mm-hmm. And students really, I think most of us know this in our teaching experiences, they're not hemmed in by discipline in the same way that we are. And we found that in the focus groups that we conducted, that students were eager to have experiences that where faculty and students had the opportunity to cross disciplines, to think integratively. So all the things that MT Engage wants us to do, that's what students want as well. So that was an interesting, useful outcome of that initial experience. Mm-hmm. Through this collaboration, we also realized not only that we were very compatible, because we think that conversation about compatibility needs to happen when you're talking to someone about potentially collaborating, but we also realized that it is very possible to have interdisciplinary partners with whom you don't collaborate effectively. So that was a useful initial experience for us. And through our multiple collaborations since then, we've had the opportunity to recognize sort of that we kind of get each other, we trust each other, and we have similar ways about going about research and teaching.
Mm-hmm. And I'll also kind of say that I think that there was a very good mix of both institutional support and kind of some naivete on our behalf as we started this conversation, because both of us were, I was in my second year here as an assistant professor, Kate was in her first year here, and so, we were kind of really coming in sort of gung-ho and with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of idealism about what we would be able to accomplish. And so out of that semester of work together, we proposed to co-facilitate a faculty learning community with the theme of interdisciplinarity. And so we had a group of 10 faculty from a range of different colleges across campus. And we spent that year working with each other. We co-taught in some of each other's classrooms. We had readings. We conversed about our readings. And I think we were kind of idealistic about what we would be able to accomplish coming out of that particular learning group.
And if you are looking for sort of concrete starting places of where you might find some interdisciplinary partners across campus, those would be two places. So certainly a faculty learning community is a really wonderful way to meet folks across campus who have similar interests, who want to potentially participate in the same kinds of work that you do. So we can't say enough about that. And then also, even today, if you take home somebody's business card, we would really encourage you to just talk about potentially switching classes for a day, because that was one of the things that we did that was most impactful for my research and teaching. So again, Meg is in dance, I'm in English. She came to my class to talk about performativity. And for those of you who have not been in an English classroom, this is what all our students look like. And that's what I look like in the classroom too, like very closed off and just like, I hope nobody's going to ask me to dance. Or to touch anybody, or stand up
and walk around.
Yes, they were not
very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then but my students had a great time and they were not sad that they had to stand up ultimately. But then I went to Meg's class, like my English self, and like all of her students like walked in and they're like dancers. And I, of course, because you're in a dance class.
Can you show us how they walked in again?
Like this. And like, which is how I should stand every day, but I don't. Of course, I had planned for them to write because I am a writing teacher, and so I had like handouts. And I walked into, of course, a dance studio, and that simple experience of walking into a dance studio, into somebody else's classroom, really helped me understand, which I should have already expected, that clearly there are such differences between disciplines, but you can have such a wonderful opportunity in thinking about your own teaching by just going into someone else's experience and their space and having that embodied experience of being in a different discipline. And her students were fantastic and helped me think about writing in really productive ways, which you may not expect going into a dance class. Anyway. All that to say, please do it.
Yeah, so we co-taught during this faculty learning community, and we had great experiences in other people's classrooms as well. And then we proposed a Rader learning community the following year. So we were able to share a group of students for a semester, which was fantastic. And we also took the opportunity to visit each other's classes during that semester. That was really interesting because it was my Dance 1000 class, which is our gen ed for fine arts, that's dance appreciation. And then Kate used her English 1010. So the students were both learning to look at dance movement and to write about dance and to understand dance composition, how the body is sort of moved in space compositionally, and then to translate some of those skills into how they were thinking about writing and writing composition. And so that was really productive. I think our hope out of the FLC was that more of those Rader learning communities would be formed. And I think we also thought that we would continue to teach that Rader learning community for a while, but then, as schedules change, on the departmental level, I was asked to take on some other courses the following fall, so I was not assigned that course the following year, and so that's that is an example of one of the challenges when we're sort of trying to make these collaborations happen within our institutional framework. Anything else on that part?
So since then, we have written a grant together, and hopefully get it. We'll find out hopefully any day now.
Yeah.
And it's an NEH grant, though, so I think the shutdown potentially did impact their decision making. And we've written an article together, and we have gone to a conference together. So we've had a lot of these professional experiences that have certainly expanded our thinking about our own research and pedagogy. And we can't say enough of how great that is, but it can be difficult.
Yeah.
So first of all, the reasons to collaborate. So again, I assume many of us already think these things, but connecting multidisciplinary knowledges and perspectives is incredibly helpful, particularly for our teaching, because our students are not broken in the same way that we are in terms of thinking that they have to be so siloed in the ways that they approach their work. So reminding ourselves of that and having the opportunity to sort of expand our understandings of what our classrooms can look like is really useful.
Yeah. And then also, I think this last bullet point of helping students integrate knowledge and skills is also really important, and that seems to be particularly important given some of the other initiatives on our campus. And that was something that Kate and I definitely experienced as a result of co-teaching in a Rader learning community. I even ran into some of those students, in the following semesters across campus, and they, were very excited to reconnect and say hi. And particularly for the students, I think they felt like the experience of having those two classes together had been very much a bonding experience for them. So it would be lovely to find ways to make more of that happen.
And again, we've been talking a lot about teaching, but for research, particularly for grant opportunities, not that you should only collaborate with somebody so you can get a grant, but often granting agencies are looking for those sort of interdisciplinary partnerships. Certainly, if you are interested in publishing in a more interdisciplinary area, such as the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, which is so effectively supported here in the LT and ITC, having those multidisciplinary perspectives can certainly help in that kind of scholarship. Also on campus, if you're working with folks across disciplines, you may be more appealing, more attractive for some grant monies.
And then I was just going to say the grant specifically that we worked on is a Humanities Connections Implementation Grant. So it's a program through the National Endowment for the Humanities that's specifically to support interdisciplinary curricular innovation at the undergraduate level. And so that project that we've been working on, and hopefully we'll hear this spring results of that application, has been a very consistent outgrowth of all of the conversation and the work that we've done together. And we've, through that process, partnered with different people on campus. And that kind of leads into our next slide, talking about some of the challenges of collaboration as well. So one challenge is disciplinary assumptions. Another challenge has to do with disciplinary language, and these two places are related. And we have found that across, even though we're both in the humanities, and we maybe even reference some of the same scholars in our work, the way that we define and understand terms is nuanced. And it's different, and there are assumptions that we make around how we use language and what concepts we foreground. And so part of our process of collaborating across our disciplines has also been to figure out how to translate so that we effectively understand each other. And then time and schedules as well, we've talked about a little bit already.
But we were joking actually this morning that we had our biggest relationship challenge recently in writing an article because we were using the same language, but we meant very different things because of our disciplinary perspectives. And talking through that was helpful for both of us, certainly in building the theoretical component of the article we're writing. But just, again, reminding ourselves that no discipline owns particular language, but we start to think of it that way. So again, I don't know if any of you, this has never happened to me, have been sitting in a meeting and just being like, oh, I can't believe that's a thing they're worrying about. Like, my discipline has figured that out already. So if you've ever had that moment, like, oh, my discipline knows better, that often comes to the fore in a conversation with an interdisciplinary partner, and it's worth having those conversations and working through them And then having the reminder, no, our disciplines have not figured it all out, and we need to move past that.
Yeah.
Or how can they inform each other?
And then also understanding that that's the experience our students are having.
Yeah.
Because our students are sitting in all of our classrooms, and they may be hearing this language that is the same word or the same term, but it helps us help them integrate the knowledge and skills if we can find ways to communicate across our disciplines and translate to.
And then one of the things we're going to move into in a moment, you all talking to each other, one of the things that we have found so helpful in our interdisciplinary partnerships is that we work in similar ways.
Mm-hmm.
So we have taken that for granted at times when we've encouraged other people to work with us, and we work with very, very drafty drafts. They are ugly, and there's outlines, and there's misspellings, kind of, not really. I'm making that up, I guess. But it's kind of a mess. And then when we've introduced other people into our drafts, they've been kind of horrified with our process. But we have had the opportunity of seeing what the product ends up being, and then there's some trust in each other. So just in creating this short slide show for you all, I put some things together. It was very drafty, and then I sent it on to Meg, knowing that by the time it came to you all, it was going to look good. Because I've had that opportunity to know how she works, that she is the kind of person who comes through when she says she's going to do something. We both are really thoughtful about deadlines. It seems like a simple thing, but I think in working with interdisciplinary partners or whenever you're collaborating on writing, you need to know how that other person works and to have that conversation about logistics so you're not frustrated doing it all by yourself, like feeling like you're back in an undergraduate classroom, like doing group work, and you're the one writing everything. So having that really, really specific, explicit discussion of how do you work, what does your writing process entail, and how do you respond to deadlines, right? Do we need to have, our grant is due on October 15th. How frequently do we need to see each other? And we kind of meet periodically in the middle of all of our craziness for an hour meeting, and then we have homework that we know that we will actually do in between then and our next meeting. So that's not the process everybody has to have, but it's worth having that very explicit discussion of this is how I work to find someone who works like you do. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, so conversations to have with potential collaborators. We just talked a little bit about engaging in explicit discussions about process. And then, these are some specific examples. Kate and I, tend to write in Google Docs together. We put comments in the margin. I often will take the writing offline when I'm working independently, and I'll do work in sort of editing on my own, and then I'll put my revisions back into the document. I also need to still use paper some, so oftentimes I need to print things and write on them. But we have a fluid way of being able to both write together and kind of take assignments and come back. We've collaborated with other people who very much need to sort of say, okay, you stop working on this document, like it's my, I get the next few days, don't change anything, I need it to be just my turn. And there's no right and wrong way, it's just identifying what your process is and also being able to communicate it. And then how does your disciplinary lens impact your approach to the particular project? And sometimes we don't know these things until we're engaged in the interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary conversation. Sometimes we don't really even recognize the assumptions that we're making around knowledge until we are confronted with a slightly different perspective. And then also knowing kind of what your end goal is. And I would say even in relationship to this, where you're open to compromise and what are the spaces where you really want to stand firm. Because that's also an important place. And the example that Kate brought up around part of our recent collaboration was, we had kind of taken turns, we were up against a deadline, and then we had a moment where we really had to work through some languaging together. And I think the reason we were able to do that is because we've established trust through our previous experience. So that place as well of even, turning a piece of writing over and being okay with someone else editing your language and kind of letting some stuff go and adding on, there's a space of trust there. And so that's, that's not something necessarily that to expect to have with everyone, right? So that's kind of why we're framing this as finding the right match.
Right, and not to belabor our extended metaphor again, but like any relationship, the key is communication. And so certainly we've had a lot of discussion, again, explicitly about whatever the content of whatever we're writing is, but then about the logistics. And so it's worth taking time to have that conversation to make sure that the collaboration goes as smoothly as possible.
So before we move into our face-to-face kind of round-robin portion of this workshop, we wanted to take just a couple of minutes to give everyone the opportunity to sort of free write in response to each of these bullet points. And what we wanted to do is take about a minute per bullet point. So if you want to use the notepad and pen that's provided, that's great. If you have another method of writing, that's great too. So let's take 1 minute to reflect on what are your teaching and research goals.
And just an FYI that we're going to ask you to use this sort of as a prompt to talk to each other. You can talk about whatever you want, but we're suggesting that you might use these questions to talk to others about your teaching and research goals and kind of how you work.
Yeah, so this is your elevator pitch kind of idea. And then either continuing to reflect on that or taking a minute to move on to the next question. What is a specific project for which you might appreciate a collaborator? And then going ahead and moving to the third bullet point. So take a minute to describe your pedagogy, what's your approach to teaching, your kind of philosophy or perspective on the classroom. And then moving on to also describe your approach to research. So your research agenda, how you conduct research, how you write, what the output of your research is. So hopefully you have some ideas down that would be of interest to share to a potential collaborator. And so we want to move into giving everyone an opportunity to have some one-on-one conversation.